The Galactic Council had ruled the stars for 10,000 years. 12 ancient species sat on the high circle, making laws that every civilization had to follow. They controlled trade. They controlled travel. They controlled everything. When they spoke, younger species listened. When they gave orders, younger species obeyed. This was the way things had always been. This was the way things would always be. Or so they believed. The day humanity's first colony ship crossed into Council space, the elder species barely noticed. Their sensors detected a small vessel moving slowly through the outer veil, the invisible border that marked the edge of civilized space. The ship was primitive by their standards. Its engines were loud. Its hull was thin. Its weapons were laughable. Another young species, said High Arbiter Morath, leader of the Valori and oldest member of the Council. His 4 eyes glanced at the report for only a moment before he set it aside. How many does this make? 4,417, his advisor replied. Morath made a sound that might have been a laugh. Give them a designation. Find them some rocks to live on. Let them learn their place. And so humanity received their welcome to the galactic community. A Valori delegate traveled to meet them, accompanied by warships that darkened the sky of their small colony. The message was clear without words. You are small, and we are vast. Ambassador Yuna represented Earth at this first meeting. She was a woman of middle age, with gray hair pulled back from a face that smiled easily but revealed nothing. She had spent 30 years in diplomacy, navigating the politics of 100 Earth nations. She understood power. More importantly, she understood those who held it. The Valori delegate was called Veth. He stood twice as tall as any human, his body covered in scales that shifted color with his mood. Right now, they were a dull purple, the color of boredom and mild contempt. You are species 4,417, Veth announced, not bothering with introductions. The Council has reviewed your capabilities and found them limited. You will be assigned territory in the disputed margins. 14 worlds, mostly rock and ice. You will remain there until the Council decides you are ready for further expansion. Yuna's assistant, a young officer named Taiho, tensed beside her. She could feel his anger rising. 14 worlds of rock and ice, given like scraps to a dog. But she placed a gentle hand on his arm, and he fell silent. We are grateful for the Council's generosity, Yuna said, her smile never wavering. 14 worlds is more than we could have hoped for. Veth's scales flickered orange surprise. Most young species protested. They begged for better territory, for more resources, for some scrap of dignity. This human was different. You accept these terms? He asked. We accept. The delegation left shortly after, their great ships vanishing into the dark between stars. Taiho waited until they were gone before he spoke. Ambassador, with respect, those worlds are worthless. The Council is insulting us. Yes, Yuna agreed. They are. Then why did you accept? Yuna turned to look at him, and for the first time, her smile carried something sharp beneath it. Because they expect us to fail, Taiho. They expect us to struggle on those frozen rocks until we beg for help or die trying. They have seen 4,000 species do exactly that. And we will be different? We will be different. She looked out at the stars, at the vast darkness that humanity had only begun to explore. We will take their rocks and their ice, and we will make them bloom. And when the Council notices what we have built, they will realize their mistake. By then, it will be too late. Taiho did not fully understand, but he trusted Yuna, as did everyone who worked with her. There was something in her eyes, a patience that stretched across decades, a vision that reached across centuries. She was not playing the Council's game. She was playing a longer one. The next 50 years proved her right. Humanity spread across, the disputed margins like water finding cracks in stone. The frozen worlds became mining colonies, their ice converted to fuel and water. The barren rocks became shipyards, their minerals forged into vessels faster and stronger than anything humanity had built before. The empty spaces between worlds became highways of trade, carrying goods that other species had never known they needed. Human merchants appeared in markets across the galaxy. They sold technology, not the most advanced, but reliable and cheap. They sold food strange crops from Earth that grew in conditions where nothing else would. They sold ideas, new ways of building, new ways of thinking, new ways of solving problems that had plagued civilizations for thousands of years. And they smiled. Always, they smiled. The Hashan were the first to notice something strange. Their representative, Counselor Drek, brought her concerns to the High Circle after a trade negotiation with human merchants left her feeling oddly unsettled. They gave us everything we asked for, she said, her insect-like mandibles clicking with confusion. Every demand, every condition, they agreed to all of it. Then what troubles you? Morith asked. When I returned to review the agreement, I realized they had given us everything we asked for. But we had not asked for the right things. Somehow, they knew what we truly needed, and they kept it for themselves. We walked away thinking we had won. We had not. Morith dismissed her concerns. The Hashan were a nervous species, always seeing threats where none existed. Humanity was young. Humanity was weak. Humanity was no threat to 10,000 years of order. But others began to notice human engineers solved a cooling problem on the Valori homeworld that had plagued their cities for centuries. In exchange, they asked only for a small trade agreement, one that, years later, gave them control of a critical shipping lane. Human doctors cured a disease that had killed millions of the Torth. In exchange, they asked only for friendship and access to Torth research archives that contain knowledge accumulated over 5,000 years. Every gift came with a price. Every kindness came with a purpose. And always the human smiled. Yuna was old now, her hair white and her steps slow. But her mind remained sharp, and her vision remained clear. From her office on Earth Station Prime, she watched the reports come in. Human colonies thrived. Human influence spread. Human ships traveled freely through territories that had once been closed to them. Teho, now an ambassador himself, visited her one evening as the sun set over the blue curve of Earth below. The council is beginning to worry, he said. They are calling meetings. They are discussing restrictions. Good, Yuna replied. That means they finally understand. Understand what? She smiled that same smile she'd worn 50 years ago, when a Valori delegate had offered humanity rocks and ice and expected them to be grateful. That we were never playing their game, she said. We were playing our own. And by the time they realized it, we had already won the first round. She turned to look at the stars, at the vast civilization humanity had built from nothing. The second round is about to begin. Far away, on the ancient world where the council held court, High Arbiter Morith summoned his advisors. His scales were dark blue, now the color of deep concern. These humans, he said, his voice heavy with centuries of authority. They do not behave as young species should. They do not bow. They do not beg. They smile and nod, and somehow they always walk away with more than they arrived with. What would you have us do? Asked Counselor Drek. Morith was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his words carried the weight of a decision that would change the galaxy forever. Remind them of their place. Before they forget it entirely, the order went out across 1,000 worlds. Humanity's rise had been noted. Humanity's ambition had been judged. And humanity, for all their cleverness, had no idea what was coming. The invitation arrived on a cold morning in January. It was written in the formal language of the council, full of ancient phrases and ceremonial greetings. But beneath the pretty words, The message was simple: come to us, or face the consequences. Admiral Jisoo read the invitation 3 times before setting it down. She was a tall woman with sharp eyes and steady hands, the kind of person who had faced death many times and learned not to blink. She had commanded human warships for 20 years. She had never lost a battle. She had also never been afraid until now. "They want us on Keth Prime," she said to her officers. "The Council's sacred world. They say it is a summit to discuss our future in the galactic community. And what do you believe it is?" asked her second-in-command, a young man named Junho. Jisoo looked at him with eyes that had seen too much. A trap, or a test? Perhaps both. But there was no choice. Refusing the invitation would be seen as an act of war. Humanity was strong, but not strong enough to fight the entire galaxy. Not yet. So Jisoo gathered her fleet, her flagship, the Indomitable, and 12 escort vessels and set course for Keth Prime. The journey took 3 weeks. She spent every day preparing, studying the Council's history, learning their weaknesses, planning for every possibility. She could not plan for what actually happened. Keth Prime was beautiful. Its cities floated on clouds of anti-gravity technology, their towers reaching towards stars that burned in colors Earth had never seen. Representatives from all 12 elder species waited in the great amphitheater, a circular chamber, carved from living crystal that amplified every sound to perfect clarity. Jisoo walked into that chamber alone. Her officers remained with the fleet. She wore her dress uniform, her medals polished, her back straight. She looked like a soldier attending a ceremony. She felt like a prisoner walking to her. Execution. High Arbiter Morith sat at the center of the council, his massive form draped in robes of woven light. His 4 eyes followed Jisoo as she approached, studying her the way a predator studies prey. "Admiral Jisoo of Earth," he said, his voice echoing through the crystal chamber. "Humanity thanks you for accepting our invitation." "The Council honors us with this meeting," Jisoo replied, her voice calm and clear. "Indeed." Morith gestured, and a holographic document appeared in the air before her. "This is the Treaty of Constraint. It outlines the terms of humanity's continued membership in the galactic community." Jisoo read the document. Each word was like a knife. Humanity's territory would be frozen at its current borders for 1,000 years. Human ships would be forbidden from certain trade routes. Human military forces would be reduced to a small defense fleet, barely enough to protect their own worlds. Human expansion would require Council approval that, the document made clear, would rarely be given. It was not a treaty. It was a cage. "You ask us to chain ourselves," Jisoo said, her voice still calm, but her eyes burning. "We ask you to know your place," Morith replied, "as all young species must. The order of the galaxy has stood for 10,000 years. It will not be disturbed by a species that has barely left its own star. And if we refuse?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Every delegate in the chamber went still. No young species had ever refused the Council. The very idea was unthinkable. Morith leaned forward, his scales shifting to a dark red, the color of threat, of violence, of ancient anger. "Then you will be taught," he said, "as others have been taught before you. The Council's patience is not infinite, Admiral. Accept these terms, or face the consequences." Jisoo stood in silence for a long moment. She thought of Earth, of the colonies humanity had built, of the children who dreamed of stars they had never seen. She thought of everything humanity had achieved in 300 years of space travel, and she thought of what it would mean to give it all away. "Humanity does not accept these terms," she said. "We will return to our territory and consider our options." She turned and walked out of the chamber. Behind her, she heard Morith's voice, cold and final. "There are no options, Admiral. Only obedience or destruction." Jisoo did not look back. She almost made it home. The ambush happened at the Varus Corridor, a narrow passage between two massive nebulae that all ships had to cross. Council warships were waiting, hundreds of them, their weapons already charged. Their targeting systems locked onto the human vessels. The battle lasted 12 minutes. Jisoo watched her escort ships die one by one, their hulls torn apart by weapons that humanity had no defense against. She ordered retreat, but there was nowhere to retreat to. She ordered surrender, but the Council ships kept firing until only the Indomitable remained. When they boarded her ship, she fought. Her crew fought beside her, using whatever weapons they could find. But there were too many, and they were too strong. They took her alive. They took her crew alive. And they made sure the entire galaxy saw what happened next. The broadcast went out on every channel, to every world. Admiral Jisoo, hero of humanity, forced to kneel before the High Circle. Her officers in chains behind her. Her ship, the mighty Indomitable, being towed to a Council prison world. Let this be a lesson, Morath announced to the watching galaxy. Humanity thought themselves special. Humanity thought themselves strong. They were wrong. The Council's order will not be challenged. Not now. Not ever. On Earth, billions watched in horror. On the colonies, millions wept. The Council had made their point. Humanity had been humbled, but the Council was not finished. 3 days later, in the city of Bizen on the coast of Korea, a human colony ship was preparing to launch. It was called the Hope of Tomorrow, and it carried 13,000 passengers' families, workers, dreamers, all eager to start new lives on distant worlds. Half of them were children. The Council enforcement fleet arrived without warning. Their commander, a Velori officer named Tith, broadcast a single message. This vessel is suspected of carrying illegal weapons. Power down your engines and prepare for inspection. Captain Yoonji, commander of the Hope of Tomorrow, responded with confusion. We carry no weapons. We are a civilian transport. Our manifest is public record. Your manifest is lies, Tith replied. Prepare for inspection or be destroyed. Yoonji refused. Her ship had nothing to hide. She demanded to speak with Earth authorities, with Council diplomats, with anyone who could resolve this peacefully. Tiff gave her 30 seconds. When the time ran out, the Council ships opened fire. The Hope of Tomorrow was not a warship. It had no shields, no armor, no weapons to fight back. The Council guns tore through it like paper. Yoonji managed to send one final message, a cry for help that would never be answered before her ship broke apart. 13,000 people, families, children. The wreckage burned for 3 hours as it fell from the sky. Pieces of it crashed into the sea off the coast of Bizen. Rescue ships found nothing but debris and ashes. On Earth, the news spread like wildfire. Grief turned to shock. Shock turned to rage. On the Council worlds, Morath received the report and nodded with satisfaction. Now they understand, he said. Now they know the price of defiance. He was wrong. For 300 years, humanity had smiled and nodded and played the game by rules they did not make. They had been patient. They had been clever. They had been willing to compromise, but there are lines that cannot be crossed. There are acts that cannot be forgiven. And the murder of 13,000 innocent souls, half of them children, was not a lesson. It was a declaration of war. Humanity did not ask for war. They did not want war. But now that war had come to them. They would answer it in a way the galaxy would never forget. In secret bases hidden across human space. In shipyards that existed on no map. In laboratories where scientists worked on projects they hoped would never be used. The word went out. It was time. The Council had crossed the line, and humanity was about to show them what that meant. The Council had always believed that humanity was young. They looked at the 300 years since Earth's first starship and saw a species barely out of its cradle. They counted human warships and found them few. They measured human territory and found it small. They studied human weapons and found them primitive. They were looking at the wrong things. What the Council never understood was that humanity had been preparing for this moment since the day the Valori first offered them rocks and ice. They had smiled and accepted because they knew they had always known that the galaxy was not kind to the weak. So while they built their colonies and traded their goods and played the game of diplomacy, they also built something else. They built the means of their survival deep beneath the surface of a moon with no name. In a facility that appeared on no chart, a man named Doyen had spent 40 years working on problems no one else would touch. He was old now, his hair white and his hands marked with age, but his mind remained as sharp as the day he had first looked at the stars and asked, "What if we need to fight them?" The Council had 10,000 years of technology. They had weapons that could crack planets, shields that could stop anything humanity could throw at them, ships that moved faster than light itself. Against such power, human warships were toys. So, Do-Hyun had not built warships. He had built something else entirely. On the night the news of Bizon reached Earth, Do-Hyun received a message from President Sujin herself. It contained only 2 words: "It's time." He had waited 40 years to hear those words. Part of him had hoped he never would. President Sujin stood before the United Human Coalition the next morning. She was a small woman with a gentle face, the kind of person who looked like she should be teaching children or tending gardens. But her voice, when she spoke, carried across the planet. Behind her stood the Bizon Memorial, where workers were already carving 13,000 names into black stone. The sky above was gray with grief. "For 300 years, Sujin said, we have sought only peace. We came to the stars with open hands. We asked only for a place among the other peoples of the galaxy. We were given rocks and ice, and we made them into homes. We were given limitations, and we worked within them. We bent. We compromised. We smiled." She paused. Her eyes found the cameras, found the billions of faces watching across human space. "Yesterday, 13,000 of our children died. Not in war. Not in battle. They died because the Council wished to teach us fear. They died because we dared to exist without permission." Her voice grew harder, colder, sharp as steel. "We do not learn fear. We teach it." Within hours, the hidden fleets emerged. For decades, humanity had built ships in secret, not in the open shipyards the Council could see, but in the dark spaces between stars and hollowed-out asteroids, in facilities that looked like nothing from the outside. These ships were not like the vessels the Council had dismissed as primitive. These ships were nightmares given form. Admiral Hyan took command of the first Vengeance Fleet. He was a quiet man who rarely smiled, whose face looked like it had been carved from stone. He had lost a daughter on the hope of tomorrow. He had not slept since. "All ships," he said, his voice calm and steady, "set course for the Keth system. We are going to bring our people home." The Keth system was where they had taken Admiral Jisoo and her crew. The Council had built a prison there, on a moon of perpetual darkness, where they kept species that had defied them. Some prisoners had been there for centuries. The Council garrison never saw the human fleet coming. Do-Hyun's first gift to humanity was called the Shadow Drive. It allowed ships to move through space without being detected. No energy signature, no heat signature, no trace at all. The Council's sensors, designed over thousands of years to track every known form of travel, saw nothing. The human ships appeared in the Keth system like ghosts, emerging from darkness. The battle was over in 40 minutes. Council warships, caught completely off guard, tried to raise shields and charge weapons. Before they could complete either action, they were already dying. Do-Hyun's second gift was the Cascade Missile, a weapon that didn't destroy ships directly, but instead disrupted the energy fields that powered them. One moment the Council vessels were mighty warships. The next, they were metal coffins drifting in the void. Admiral Hyan watched the last Council ship go dark. He felt no satisfaction. There was no joy in this. "Land the troops," he ordered. "Find our people." The prison on Keth's moon was ancient, built by species that had died out long before humans learned to make fire. Its walls were thick, its guards were many, and its reputation was terrible. No one had ever escaped from it, that no one had ever tried to break in, either. The human soldiers moved through the facility like water through cracks, using weapons and tactics the Council had never seen. They did not fight fair. They did not announce themselves. They simply appeared, struck, and vanished before the enemy could respond. General Minho led the assault personally. He found Admiral Jisoo in a cell deep beneath the surface, chained to a wall, her uniform torn and her face bruised. But her eyes were still fierce, still unbroken. "General," she said, her voice rough but steady, "I knew you would come." "We never leave our people behind," Minho replied as his soldiers cut her chains. "Never. They freed every human prisoner. They freed prisoners from other species too, beings who had been locked in that darkness for decades, even centuries. When they left, the prison was empty and the Council guards were either captured or dead. But Minho did one more thing before he departed. He planted charges throughout the facility. When the human fleet jumped back to friendly space, the prison exploded behind them, a ball of fire visible from orbit, a message written in flame for all the galaxy to see. "We came for our people. We found them. And we left nothing behind." The news spread across the Council worlds like a shockwave. For the first time in 10,000 years, a young species had struck back. For the first time ever, they had won. High Arbiter Morath received the report in his private chambers. His scales had turned gray, the color of fear. "How?" he whispered. "How did they do this? Our sensors showed nothing. Our ships were destroyed before they could fight. This is impossible." "It appears," his advisor said carefully, "that humanity has been hiding their true capabilities for some time." "For how long?" The advisor hesitated. "Perhaps since the beginning." Morath understood then. The smiles, the nods, the endless compromises and agreements. All of it had been a mask. While the Council watched humanity's public face, they had been building something else in the shadows. Something terrible. "Prepare the full fleet," Morath ordered. "Every ship from every elder species. We will crush them with numbers alone. High Arbiter, if their weapons are as advanced as they appear, I do not care." Morath's roar echoed through the chamber. "They are one species against 12. They are 300 years against 10,000. They cannot possibly." He stopped. He realized in that moment that he had said the same words before. He had said them when humanity first arrived. He had said them when humanity began to prosper. He had said them when humanity refused his treaty. He had been wrong every time, but it was too late to change course now. The Council had drawn the line. Humanity had crossed it. And now, one side would have to fall. In the rebuilt city of Bizon, Admiral Jisoo stood before the memorial, where 13,000 names were carved into stone. She had been rescued, but she felt no victory. Those names would never come back. Those children would never grow up. President Sujin stood beside her. "The Council is gathering their fleets," she said. "They mean to destroy us completely." Jisoo nodded. She had expected nothing less. "Then we will have to destroy them first. Can we?" Jisoo looked at the names on the wall. She thought of the prisoners she had met in that dark cell. Beings who had spent lifetimes in chains for the crime of defying the Council. She thought of the worlds that had been crushed, the species that had been erased, the 10,000 years of tyranny that the galaxy had accepted as normal. "We can," she said. "And we will." The second round was about to begin, and this time, humanity would not stop until the game was over. The Council assembled the largest fleet in galactic history. Ships from all 12 elder species gathered at the border of human space, a wall of metal and fire that stretched across light years. Millions of soldiers, thousands of warships, weapons that could shatter moons and crack the cores of planets. High Arbiter Morath stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the fleet form around him. His scales had returned to their natural purple, the color of confidence restored. Yes, humanity had surprised them. Yes, humanity had struck a blow that the galaxy would remember. But this armada of ancient power would end the threat forever. "Today," Morath broadcast to his forces, "we remind the galaxy why the Council has ruled for 10,000 years. Today, we erase the mistake called humanity from existence. Let no ship escape. Let no world survive. Let them become a story we tell to future species who think they can challenge us." The fleet moved forward. They found nothing. Human space was empty. The colonies were abandoned. The shipyards were dark. The great stations that had once bustled with trade and life floated silent in the void. The Council fleet swept through system after system, finding only ghosts. "Where are they?" Morath demanded. "They cannot have fled. There is nowhere to go." His officers searched desperately for answers. Their sensors showed nothing. Their scouts found nothing. It was as if humanity had simply vanished. Then the lights went out. Not the lights on. Morath shipped the lights everywhere. Across the entire galaxy, the communication networks that had connected civilizations for millennia suddenly went dark. Trade beacons fell silent. Navigation systems failed. The carefully maintained order that allowed ships to travel between stars collapsed in an instant. This was Dohian's true masterwork. The Cascade Protocol. For 40 years, he had studied the Council's infrastructure. Not their weapons. Not their ships. The systems that held their civilization together. The communication relays that let them coordinate across impossible distances. The energy networks that powered their worlds. The supply chains that fed 100 species. He had found every weakness. Every connection. Every point where a single failure could spread to 1,000 others. And then he had built the tools to break them all at once. On Valori Prime, the homeworld of the eldest species, the power grid failed without warning. Cities that had glowed with light for 10,000 years went dark. Factories that had never stopped working ground to a halt. Hospitals lost power. Transportation systems crashed. In a single moment, the most advanced civilization in the galaxy was thrown back to an age of darkness. On Hashan, the orbital stations that fed billions suddenly lost contact with the surface. Supply ships carrying food and medicine found themselves unable to navigate. The careful balance that kept the Hashan alive began to crumble. On world after world, the same scene repeated. The Council's power had never come from their weapons alone. It came from their control, their ability to manage resources, to coordinate actions, to maintain order across impossible distances. That control was gone now. And then the human fleets appeared. They came from the shadows between stars, from places the Council had never thought to look. They came in numbers far greater than the Council had believed possible. They came with weapons that turned the Council's advantages into weaknesses. Admiral Hyan led the assault on Valori Prime itself. His ships emerged from shadow space directly above the planet, bypassing the defense platforms that no longer had power to fire. The great Valori war fleet, scattered and confused by the communication blackout, could not coordinate a response. Each ship fought alone, unable to call for help, unable to know if help was even possible. The battle lasted 3 hours. When it was over, the Valori fleet existed only as debris. General Minho landed on the surface with 200,000 human soldiers. The Valori cities, dark and helpless, offered little resistance. But Minho had not come to destroy. He had come to send a message. His soldiers moved through the capital, disabling defenses and capturing leaders. They did not harm civilians. They did not burn buildings. They simply took control, methodically and completely, until the flag of humanity flew over the Great Council chamber where species had been judged and condemned for 10,000 years. Minho broadcast a message on every frequency he could reach. This is what happens when you harm our children. This is what happens when you mistake mercy for weakness. The Council's rule is over. A new order is coming. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out. Hashan fell. The Torf surrendered. Species that had sat on the high circle for millennia found themselves powerless. Their fleets destroyed, their worlds occupied, their ancient authority crumbled to dust. High Arbiter Morth tried to flee. His flagship, cut off from the rest of the Council fleet, jumped from system to system seeking safety. But there was no safety. Humanity was everywhere now, appearing from shadows, striking without warning, vanishing before a response could be formed. They found him hiding in a dead system, his ship damaged and his crew desperate. When human soldiers boarded the vessel, Morth did not fight. He stood in his command chamber, his scales gray with defeat, and waited. Admiral Jisu came to see him personally. She walked through the halls of his flagship, past soldiers who watched in silence, past the symbols of Valori power that now meant nothing. She entered his chamber and stood before him, a human woman, small by his standards, facing the being who had ruled the galaxy for longer than her species had existed. "High Arbiter," she said, "you crossed a line." Morth's 4 eyes met hers. "I was maintaining order. I was protecting the galaxy from chaos. You murdered 13,000 innocent people. Half of them were children. Casualties of... They were not casualties." Jisu's voice was quiet but sharp as a blade. They were not soldiers. They were not threats. They were families, dreamers, children who had never harmed anyone in their short lives. You killed them to teach us fear. She stepped closer. Did it work? Are we afraid? Morth did not answer. He could not. Here's what happens now, Jisu continued. The Council is finished. The order you built, the order that let you crush anyone who challenged you, that let you keep species as slaves and call it civilization, that order is over. We are building something new. Something better. You cannot rule the galaxy, Morris said. You are too few. You are too young. Without the Council, there will be chaos, wars, destruction. Perhaps. Jisu nodded slowly. But that is our choice to make now. And I would rather face chaos than live under tyranny. She turned to leave, then stopped at the door. You will live, Morith. We are not executioners. You will see the world you built burn down around you, and you will know that you caused it. When children in ages to come learn about the fall of the Council, they will learn your name. Not as a ruler, not as a leader, as a warning. She left him there, alone in the ruins of 10,000 years. The war lasted 3 years. 3 years of battles and sieges, of occupation and liberation. 3 years of suffering and sacrifice, of grief and determination. But the outcome was never in doubt after the Cascade Protocol fell. The Council had built their power on control. When that control broke, their power broke with it. When the last Council world fell, when the last elder species accepted defeat, the galaxy stood silent. 10,000 years of order had ended in fire and shadow. The great civilizations that had ruled the stars were humbled. Their fleets destroyed, their leaders captured. Their authority erased Dot and humanity young, primitive humanity. Species 4417 stood at the center of the ruins. President Sujin addressed the galaxy from the steps of the old council chamber, now occupied by human forces. Behind her, the flags of 100 species hung in surrender. "The war is over," she said. "The council is fallen. But we did not fight to become new tyrants. We did not sacrifice so much to simply replace one cage with another." She looked at the camera, at the billions of beings watching across the shattered galaxy. "We fought because a line was crossed. We fought because children were murdered. We fought because 10,000 years of order had become 10,000 years of oppression, and someone had to say, 'No more.'" She paused. "Now comes the harder work. Building something better. Something just. Something that protects the weak instead of crushing them." She straightened her shoulders. "Let us begin." The galaxy held its breath. The old order was dead. A new one was about to be born. 10 years had passed since the fall of the council. 10 years since the great fleets burned. 10 years since the old order crumbled. And something new rose from its ashes. The galaxy that emerged was different from anything that had come before. Humanity had won the war. They could have done what every conqueror before them had done, claimed the throne, built an empire, ruled the stars with the same iron fist the council had used. Many expected them to. Many feared they would. They did not. Instead, they did something that shocked every species in the galaxy. They gave power away. The Geneva Accords were signed on the anniversary of the Bison Massacre, on the same ground where the memorial stood. Representatives from 300 species gathered, not just the old elder races, but the young ones too, the forgotten ones, the species that the council had ignored or crushed, or kept as pets. Each of them received the same thing: one vote. Not power based on age or strength or wealth. Not influence earned through conquest or intimidation. One species, one vote. The mightiest elder race and the newest starfarer, equal in the halls of the new Galactic Assembly. Admiral Jisoo, now president of the Human Coalition, presented the framework herself. She stood in the great chamber where the council had once held court, but the room had been changed. The high thrones where the elder species had sat above all others were gone, replaced by a circular arrangement where every delegate could see every other. For 10,000 years, Jisoo said, the council ruled through fear. They decided which species were worthy and which were not. They crushed those who challenged them and rewarded those who obeyed. They called it order. It was slavery. She looked around the room at faces from 100 worlds. Faces, marked by scales and fur and features no human word could describe. Some looked at her with hope, some with suspicion, some with hatred that centuries might never heal. Humanity did not destroy the council to replace it. We destroyed it because its very existence was wrong. No species should rule over others. No civilization should decide another's fate. We are all travelers in the same darkness, seeking the same light. She gestured to the document displayed behind her, the Geneva Accords. Page after page of new laws and new principles. This is our offer to the galaxy. Not rule, partnership. Every species, equal voice. Every dispute, resolved through law, not force. Every being, protected from the tyranny of the strong. The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then a Valori delegate rose. He was young for his kind, barely 3 centuries old. He had lost family in the war. He had every reason to hate humanity. And what of those who refuse? He asked, what of those who seek to rebuild the old ways? Will humanity crush them as you crushed us? Yuzu met his eyes without flinching. Humanity will not rule alone. The assembly will have its own forces, drawn from every willing species. If any civilization, including humanity, tries to become what the Council was, they will face the united strength of all the others. She paused. I cannot promise you that humanity will always be good. I cannot promise that we will never be corrupted by power. All I can promise is that we have built a system designed to stop anyone, including ourselves, from becoming tyrants. If you see us becoming what we fought against, you will have the power to stop us. Another pause. That is our gift to you. That is what we bought with 13,000 lives. Not dominion. Not vengeance. A chance for something better. One by one, the delegates voted. Not all agreed. Some walked out, refusing to be part of any order humanity had created. Some voted yes with reluctance, trusting nothing, hoping for little, but enough said yes. The Galactic Assembly was born. In the years that followed, humanity proved that their words were not empty. They shared their technology freely, not just the weapons of war, but the tools of peace. They helped rebuild the worlds they had damaged. They trained soldiers from every species to form the Assembly's protection forces, stepping back from leadership even when others expected them to lead. And at the heart of every Assembly building, carved into the foundation stone, stood the Bizan Doctrine. 7 words that would guide the new order for centuries to come. The strong protect the weak, always. High Arbiter Morath lived to see all of it. He had not been executed or imprisoned. Instead, humanity had given him something far more painful. They let him watch. He saw his people rebuild, not as rulers, but as equals. He saw young species rise to prominence, their ideas shaping the galaxy in ways the Council had never allowed. He saw the old order he had dedicated his life to maintaining fade into history. And he saw humanity, the species he had dismissed as primitive. The species he had tried to crush become something he never could have imagined. Not conquerors, not tyrants, guardians. One day, near the end of his long life, a human scholar came to interview him for a historical archive. The scholar was young, earnest, interested in understanding how the old order had worked. Looking back, the scholar asked, "What do you think was your greatest mistake?" Morath was silent for a long time. His scales, once bright with power, had faded to pale gray. His 4 eyes, once sharp and fierce, were clouded with age. "I thought you were young," he said finally. "I looked at your 300 years and saw a child. I thought you had not learned the truth of the galaxy, that power is all that matters, that the strong survive and the weak serve." He shook his head slowly. "But you were not young. You were new. And there is a difference. The young learn from their elders. They accept the way things are because they know nothing else. But you came from outside. You looked at our 10,000 years of order and asked, why?" He met the scholar's eyes. "That was our mistake. We never asked why. We assumed our way was the only way, that our power meant we were right. And when you challenged us, we did not try to understand. We tried to destroy. In doing so, we became exactly what you accused us of being." The scholar nodded and made notes. Before leaving, she asked one final question. "Do you regret it? The attack on the hope of tomorrow?" Morath's answer came without hesitation. "Every day. Not because we lost, because we did it at all. 13,000 lives snuffed out to teach a lesson. Children who had done nothing wrong, murdered to prove a point that did not need proving." His voice cracked. "I ruled for 8,000 years. I made decisions that shaped civilizations. But that one choice, that one act of cruelty, is all that history will remember. And history will be right." On the shore of Bizan, the memorial stood unchanged. 13,000 names, carved in black stone, overlooking a harbor where children played in the shadow of ships that had once gone to war. A young girl named Hana walked along the beach with her grandmother. The old woman moved slowly, her steps careful on the sand. She had survived the burning, She had watched her world go to war and come back changed. She carried memories that would haunt her until her last breath. But today, the sun was warm and the waves were gentle, and her granddaughter's laughter filled the air. Hannah stopped before the memorial, looking up at the names stretching high above her. She was too young to understand what they meant, too young to know the horror and the grief and the terrible resolve that had followed. "Grandmother," she said, "why are there so many names?" The old woman knelt beside her, her knees aching, but her heart full. She looked at the stone, at the names of friends she had lost, of a world that had been shattered and rebuilt. "Because we remember," she said softly, "and because we promised." "Promised what?" The grandmother pulled her granddaughter close. "That no one will ever have to add more names." Above them, in the endless dark between stars, human ships kept their silent watch. They were joined now by vessels from 100 other species, the Assembly's fleet, sworn to protect the weak and stand against tyranny wherever it appeared. Not conquerors, not rulers. Guardians. The galaxy, scarred and wounded but finally free, continued to turn. On 1,000 worlds, beings of every shape and kind looked up at the stars and dared to dream of futures that the old order would never have allowed. And in the great halls of the Assembly, where once the Council had ruled through fear, representatives from 300 species worked together to build something new. They argued and debated and sometimes failed. But they kept trying, because humanity had shown them something the Council never understood. The universe was vast and dark and full of danger, but it was also full of possibility, and species that worked together, that protected each other, that lifted each other up instead of pushing each other down, could face any darkness. The Galactic Council had ruled for 10,000 years. Their order was gone now, erased by a species they had tried to crush, but the galaxy endured. And for the first time in ages beyond counting, it began to breathe free.